Well, at the same time, Senator Blanche Lincon of Arkansas has just put forth a plan that she says will bring 100% transparency to the derivative market. The bill aims to shine light on the dark derivatives market by forcing them, like stocks and other instruments on Wall Street, onto public exchanges. And while the bill, in my opinion, doesn't go far enough in closing these so-called end-user loopholes, it does at least call for capital requirements so you can't bet with no money, as the banks have been for years now. It's how they make so much. Banks would actually have to have the cash to back their bets. Imagine that. And the bill proposes a separation between commercial banking and wild swaps speculation, sort of naked betting with no money, the sort of thing that was covered up by our government in 2008. In response to the Blanche Lincon bill, Secretary Geithner sent a letter to Secretary Lincon. It outlines the need for Wall Street reform, but adds some interesting adjectives from the Treasury Secretary, of course, facilitated so much of what went wrong in past years. Geithner wants, quote, conservative capital requirements. It'll be interesting to see what he thinks is conservative. 50 to 1, 100 to 1. Normally for stock traders, it's only 2 to 1. The banks were running 40, 50, 100 to 1. It'd be interesting to hear what he thinks conservative is. And as for transparency for, quote, standard derivative contracts, the standard part is critically important since it has yet to be clearly defined. 80 to 85% of all derivatives are actually made with a boilerplate contract, and it is still up for debate whether they serve as a customized or standardized derivative once you fill in the blanks on that boilerplate. Think of it like PowerPoint. You fill in the blanks, your name, the time. Has that now been customized or not? If those 85% are deemed customizable, Mr. Geithner has given the banks a giant old loophole once again to exploit and trade in secret. Earlier, in a DR Show exclusive, I spoke with Arkansas Senator Blanche Lincon for the first time about her aggressive derivative reform plan trying to shine light on this issue. It is her first interview since unveiling that proposal. Take a look. Senator Lincon, what does the White House think about your proposal?
I don't know. Have you asked them?
I haven't had the opportunity, and clearly you have not either. I looked down it, and it looks very transparent. It looks very public. It looks like you have addressed the darkest, most manipulated, most infinitely levered piece of the market with this bill in a way that brings everything into daylight. Have you received resistance from the banking community? Because, quite honestly, this is where they make a huge percentage of their profits.
That's right. Well, that was our objective, to bring 100% transparency, and we know that sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, and we also know that it's important to have that sunlight in these extremely dark markets.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and of course there's going to be some resistance. We understand that. We know that there's going to be concerns that are out there. But we also know that, we're given ample opportunity here, I think, to really make sure that those who have controlled this information for as long as these markets have existed are now going to have to share that information with others. And to make sure through that, both the transparency and the sharing of that information, we're going to have less risk, less systemic risk, and the ability to really produce, I think, more confidence in the consumers and in the marketplace, and really be a leader worldwide.
Yeah, it's an impressive proposal that you put forward. There are two things, or two different ways that derivatives can be utilized, as you and I both fundamentally know. We used one example yesterday with Senator Dorgan with the orange juice crop and how an orange juice farmer might use a derivative to hedge the price at which he or she might sell their oranges so that if there's a big freeze or a frost or something, that they're able to protect it. It's like an insurance policy on the weather for an orange grove or on price volatility for heating oil. Those types of derivatives are very beneficial to all of us. At the same time, there are the other deployment of these derivatives, the Magnetar or Goldman Sachs version, where you invent a mortgage security that you may well know is not worth that much, and then you'll use one of these derivatives to bet that the balloon that you've just created with your little helium tank is going to pop. How do you keep the good and get rid of the bad?
But we make sure that they have to be cleared. We produce the clearing and the mandatory clearing and mandatory trading, and making sure that with that we again create the transparency and the information that needs to be out there. There is the ability to have an end user exemption on commercial users, and I think when you look at what those orange growers or those natural gas folks or anybody else that is a commercial end user that's using 100%, that they're using that to deal with 100% of their commercial risk, as opposed to speculation or anything else, then they're going to find that they're okay in this bill.
Why shouldn't an end user have to buy their derivatives on an exchange just like end users of equity derivatives have to buy their derivatives on an exchange? Why are they exempted?
Well, I think that, quite frankly, in this economy, and particularly in the way that these things have been created, there's a real necessity for those individuals to be able to park or to mitigate their risk. But they also have something to back that up. And I think that that's a critical component here. You mentioned it yourself in terms of talking about what investment firm might do in terms of that mortgage security. Knowing where that asset is or what the asset actually is to begin with is extremely vague, if not completely non-transparent.
How do you deal with the perceived vulnerability that you are a friend of big industry, a friend of the banks? Your opponent, Lieutenant Governor Bill Halter, who was on our show on April 7th, said the following.
She voted for the Wall Street bailout despite trying to tell people she's voted against more money for Wall Street. She's received over $1.2 million from financial companies, securities companies, and so forth. And you're right. She's on the Agriculture Committee. She chairs the Agriculture Committee, which has oversight of the derivatives legislation. But she's been on that committee for over 10 years and, did not provide any oversight of derivatives.
How do you look at this bill in the context of past oversight, and do you believe you bear responsibility for past oversight?
No, I don't. I mean, quite frankly, I only took chairmanship of this committee back in early October, the end of September, and we've been working hard since then to not only put together the staff, but more importantly, the legislation that we need, I think, to really put sunlight on these dark markets and the circumstances that really were at the center of the economic crisis that we've experienced in this country. We've worked with all the members of the committee. We've worked with Democrats and Republicans. We've worked with the industry side. We have worked with the administration and everybody to come up with what I believe is the best bill to deal with the circumstances that we have been experiencing in this country for the last 2 years in the economic crisis and what caused it.
And then my last question, which is in some ways a reiteration, but you look at the $1.2 million in donations and you look at the amount of profitability that the derivatives market provides to the banks, particularly after technology eliminated their ability to make money with other businesses. You may be in for one heck of a fight here with the banks by trying to make a transparent market, which for banks means a less profitable one.
Well, let me tell you, we all know what needs to happen for the American people. This is not about the left and the right. This is not the political ideas. This is what needs to happen to put our economy back on track, get people back into the stable conditions of being able to produce jobs, and certainly, again, being a world leader, as we should be, in setting the example of what needs to happen. I think this bill, comes very, very close, if not perfect on the spot, in terms of making sure that things that are risky are dealt with as a risky tool should be dealt with. Making sure that those things that can be cleared should be cleared. Those that cannot are going to be required to have certainly more capital and more regulation, as they should. And that responsibility of the risky nature there is not going to be passed on, whether it's to Main Street or small town banks, community banks.
Follow Senator Blanche Lincon. Will the White House be with her, or will they fight her?